Welcome to a clever tale from Clevertouch. Today is the King's Whodunit. King Jasper ruled a tiny land that had more sheer cliffs than fields and more sharp rocks than trees. His castle perched upon the sheerest of these cliffs and above the sharpest of the rocks. Large waves pounded against both cliff and rocks by day and night, and passing ships had to steer well away from Jasper's land if they wanted that passage to continue. To help them, Jasper's kingly ancestors had built a single lofty tower at the furthest tip of the castle, right at the edge of the cliffs. In the uppermost room sat a beacon surrounded by mirrors on one side and crystal windows on the other. When lit, the beacon shone a light far out to sea, warning sailors of the dangers below. For hundreds of years, the kings of High Beam, as the castle was known, personally took it upon themselves to ensure that the beacon was lit each and every night, whatever the weather. The king's royal chambers lay directly beneath the beacon, and lighting it was seen as the king's most royal duty, along with making up rules and chopping off the heads of anyone who displeased him. Luckily enough for the small band of subjects who also lived in the castle, King Jasper spent little time making up rules and even less time chopping off heads. As long as he got his usual breakfast, a delicious cheese omelette, at the usual time, 8 o'clock sharp, to enjoy while he read his favourite type of book, a whodunit, he was a content and peaceful king as a rule, or as a ruler, which is what he was. However, one damp grey morning, strange events occurred that were far from usual. The unusualness had actually started during the night before, but King Jasper wasn't to know that. He had received a fascinating whodunit from his friend Queen Jasmine, the ruler of a neighbouring kingdom, or queendom, which is what it was. Full of clues and murders, suspects and pointed fingers, the book was too exciting to wait for the next day's breakfast, so King Jasper had retired to bed early to discover as quickly as possible who'd done it in the whodunit. Throughout the night, strange, disturbing noises tormented the cliff-top castle, from both inside and outside its walls. Yet high above it all, in the lonely tower above the raging sea, King Jasper lay propped up in bed, too engrossed in his book to notice a thing. The next morning, as previously stated, was damp and grey. Most mornings often give the impression of freshness, bright with the promise of a new day. Yet this one seemed exhausted before it had even begun, probably because of the terrible storm that had torn along the coast during the night. Meanwhile, King Jasper lay snoring and snug under layers of warm blankets. His whodunit sat sprawled upon the floor. The final chapter had slipped unread from his fingers as his eyelids had forced themselves shut sometime deep in the night. At precisely 8 o'clock, the king's cockerel, the bird specially trained by the castle's chicken boy, did what it had been specially trained to do. At the sound of the cockle-doodle-doing being cockle-doodle-done, King Jasper immediately sat up, so eager was he to read the final chapter and discover the identity of the book's foul villain. But first, he readied himself for the knock on the door that always signalled the arrival of his delicious breakfast. He decided that a full tummy would be just the thing to help him cope with the shocking discoveries contained within his book. At 5 minutes past 8, the king was mildly irritated, but mostly confused. No breakfast. At 10 minutes past, he was puzzled, but mostly annoyed. By 20 past, he was both equally astounded and outraged. Clambering out of bed, King Jasper huffed into his clothes and flung open the door to his chamber. Somebody was going to lose their head. Stomping angrily down the 300 steps of his private tower, King Jasper appeared in the doorway of the castle kitchens, red-faced and puffing steam. "Where," he demanded, "is my omelette?" "Oh, your Majesty," spluttered the royal chef, trying his best to hide behind a silver platter. "I'm afraid I was unable to make it." "Why ever not?" thundered the king. "Who's responsible?" "Well, I stammered the chef. "We all have duties," stated the king regally. "Mine is to light the royal beacon. Yours is to make my morning omelette. Or perhaps mine is to have your head on that silver platter." Dropping the platter with a shriek, the chef fell to his knees. "Your Majesty, forgive me. I could not make your omelette because the chicken boy didn't bring me any eggs." "Oh, really?" hissed King Jasper. "Come on." So the king and the chef went to find the chicken boy. As they approached the coops that nestled against the inner wall of the castle, Jasper was surprised by the number of feathers that littered the ground. They discovered the chicken boy tearfully exiting the largest coop, his tunic covered in feathers. His egg-collecting basket sat empty in the mud. "What's with the tears, boy?" snapped the king. "Feeling guilty, perhaps?" "I'm sorry, your highness," replied the boy, eyes wide with confusion and sorrow. "Don't play dumb," growled Jasper. "Here at Castle Highbeam we all have responsibilities. Mine is to light the royal beacon, chef's is to make my omelette, and yours is to deliver fresh eggs to the kitchen so that he can do so. However, perhaps mine is to place your head in that much too empty basket." The boy gulped in alarm and then began to point frantically towards the chicken coop. "It's not my fault, your highness. Honest it isn't. There just aren't any eggs left. Look!" Intrigued by this real whodunit, King Jasper cautiously approached the coop's filthy entrance and peered inside. What he saw made him stagger back in horror. The chef had to catch him as he almost fell into the dirt. Sprawled across several nests, surrounded by outraged chickens, lay a loudly snoring ogre. A sticky layer of egg yolk and feathers ran from its chin and down onto its warty chest. "How did that filthy ogre get inside the walls?" spluttered the king. Eagerly the boy revealed the truth. "It was the gatehouse guard, your majesty. He left the portcullis open. Everyone knows ogres can't resist fresh chicken eggs." "The portcullis was up!" snarled Jasper in disbelief. "Follow me." So the king, the chef, and the chicken boy went to find the guard. They climbed the stone steps up to the ramparts above the main gate. The cold wind blew sharply, and Jasper scowled at the memory of his cosy, warm bed. The guard stood peering out across the hillside and didn't notice them until King Jasper coughed impatiently. Oh, your majesty!" cried the man, snapping to attention with professional speed. "Well, at least I haven't discovered you sleeping on duty," sneered the king. "Of course not, your highness," insisted the guard, clicking his heels together. "Really?" asked Jasper. "Then can you explain how a disgusting ogre was able to enter the castle and eat every single egg in the royal chicken coops, so that Chef here was unable to make me my morning omelette?" Gaped the guard as he desperately tried to follow the king's words. "We all have responsibilities," Jasper continued. "Mine is to light the royal beacon. Chef makes my omelettes. Chicken boy gathers the eggs. Your duty is to keep dangerous creatures from wandering in during the night. Maybe my duty is to display your head from these very battlements for all to see." "My king," cried the guard, "I was only following orders. Sir Scrapslot demanded that I leave the gates open in case he needed to return in a hurry." "Return? From where?" the frustrated monarch demanded. "Down the hill, sire. He rode out with the rest of the night watch as I came on duty, but I don't know why." "Right," Jasper rumbled. "Everyone, follow me." So the king, the chef, the chicken boy, and the guard marched down the winding cliff-top path, which led towards the village that nestled in the bay beneath the cliffs. The grey clouds were being slowly driven away by a fresh breeze, and the sun peeped from behind them, as if it too wanted to see what would happen. The small group met Sir Scrapsalot and his men as they rode wearily back towards the castle. Their faces were black with soot, and each man's dented armour appeared to be smoking. Upon spying their red-faced king and his followers, the knights reined in their tired horses. "Long night, Sir Knight?" inquired King Jasper, with one arched eyebrow high enough to tickle his crown. "Indeed, sire," replied Sir Scrapsalot, "but there was really no need to come out to greet us." "Didn't want me to catch you, hey?" sneered the king. Beg your pardon?" gasped Sir Scrapsalot, as his own eyebrows disappeared up behind his helmet's visor. "We all have responsibilities," began Jasper grandly. "Mine is to light the royal beacon. Chef is tasked with making omelettes. The chicken boy tends chickens and the omelette-making eggs they produce. My guards protect the eggs by keeping the castle gates closed. That is their duty, unless they are foolishly ordered to open those gates by irresponsible knights who go gallivanting off into the darkness. Where was your duty last night while an ogre created chaos inside the castle walls? At the bottom of a tankard in the village tavern?" "What?" barked Sir Scrapsalot in growing outrage. "Perchance my duty is to have your heads bobbing up and down in a barrel of the ale you love so much," continued the king angrily. Sir Scrapsalot instantly stiffened inside his battered armour. "You offend my honour, sire," the old knight protested. "My men and I were about our duties. The dragon alarm housed inside the village clock tower called for aid, and we responded gallantly." "Oh, indeed," scoffed Jasper haughtily. "Even though the only dragon hereabouts has agreed to leave our kingdom alone as long as we feed him beef twice a month." "I insist upon my honour that you accompany me at once to the beach," retorted Sir Scrapsalot. "Then you shall see the truth of it." And so the king, the chef, the chicken boy, the guard, and the small band of knights made the long descent towards the beach. They marched in silence. The king, furious at this ever more complicated chain of events that had conspired to ruin his breakfast, each of his subjects furious for being accused of a lack of duty. The strong sea breeze pressed clumps of long grass into the sand dunes as the grouchy king and his grumpy party trudged onto the narrow beach that curved towards the rocks beneath Castle High Beam's cliffs. The sight that had awaited them stopped King Jasper in his tracks. As his boots sank into the wet sand, so did his feelings of anger towards Sir Scrapsalot and his men. Wooden crates and boxes littered the beach, while a scattered herd of goats wandered amongst them, nibbling on anything remotely edible. The cause of all this chaos was not far to be found. Slumbering upon the rocks at the far end of the beach was a dragon all too familiar to King Jasper. Clenching his fists, as his anger returned, His Royal Highness thumped across the sand towards the snoring beast. His entourage followed warily. Noticing what looked suspiciously like the horned skulls of goats littering the ground beneath the dragon, Jasper drew in his breath and bellowed, "Wake up, you vile creature!" Waking a dragon is not advisable at the best of times, and doing so with insults is almost as wise as visiting one on a plate with an apple in your mouth. But Jasper was too furious to think about what was wise. As the dragon spluttered awake in a cloud of belched smoke, the determined monarch planted his feet and placed his hands upon his hips. The other castle dwellers had half a mind on admiring his courage, whilst the other half wondered if royal meat would take long enough to chew on to allow them time to escape. "Little King Jasper," exclaimed the dragon in surprise, "to what do I owe the honour?" "Don't speak to me of honour," the king snapped, "for you clearly have none." "Oh, really?" sneered the dragon, raising the scales on the back of her head ever so slightly. Her eyes flashed, as if lit by the flames within. "Indeed," continued Jasper, "for you have forgotten your responsibilities." The she-dragon slowly stretched her long neck towards the small huddle of humans, trails of smoke from her nostrils wrapped around them like chains. With a grin that revealed far too many teeth than necessary, the dragon whispered, "Then you had better remind me of them." Ignoring the menace in her voice, King Jasper blundered on. "We all have responsibilities in this kingdom. For instance, mine is to light the royal beacon, and the chef's is to prepare my meals. The chicken boy keeps my royal larder stocked with fresh eggs, while the guards and knights protect the castle from intruders and other dangers. Your duty is to honour our agreement and not bring terror to our kingdom in return for free beef. Perhaps mine is to legalize dragon slaying and hang your skull from these cliffs as a warning. For look at the chaos you've caused. There are goats and discarded food crates everywhere." "But that's not my doing," protested the dragon. "The goats and crates were here long before I turned up. In fact, I'm merely here to help clean up the mess a little." "Clean up?" spat King Jasper. "How exactly are you helping to do that?" The dragon grinned an even wider grin than before, revealing clumps of meat still stuck in its molars. "Well," she sighed, "there are certainly fewer goats to round up than there were earlier. And I'd have done more if Sir Scrap Metal and his gaggle of goons hadn't turned up. It fair tired me out convincing them to leave it all to me." King Jasper rubbed at his chin as he stared once more upon the knights and their battered armour. "So, if you didn't make this mess, then where did all of these goats and boxes come from?" "That would be me," cried a voice from behind. The king and his troop spun in alarm to find a tall woman in a tricorn hat and billowing coat standing proudly behind them. Although the hat was torn and the coat in tatters, the gleaming cutlass at her side marked her for a ship's captain. "The mess, as you call it, is the cargo from my ship. food from every corner of the globe, and a herd of the finest goats a beast ever did chomp on. Her eyes narrowed and scowled at the dragon, who, incredibly, began to look rather embarrassed. Undaunted by the captain's steely gaze, King Jasper swept his arm regally towards her and pronounced, "Then finally we have found the cause of all the trouble. Good knights, arrest this woman!" Without blinking, the captain coolly responded, "On what charge exactly?" Why, for littering for a start," the monarch exclaimed, "and for preventing the king of this realm from having his breakfast." "His breakfast?" spluttered the captain incredulously. "I assume from the silly little crown on your head that you're talking about your breakfast." "Indeed I am, madam," thundered King Jasper, only partly aware that his knights had not yet moved to arrest her. I don't think you'll fully understand the seriousness of the situation." "Then you had better explain," snarled the captain. Fuming at the woman's disrespectful tone, Jasper took a deep breath and began. "In my kingdom, we all have our duties to perform, and it is everyone's responsibility to ensure that they are carried out. Those who fail in their duty could find their head on a chopping block. My duty is to light the royal beacon that guides ships such as yours safely through the night. My chef's duty is to prepare my meals, such as the breakfast he could not make me this morning. This young boy has the duty of delivering fresh eggs to the kitchens each day, something he could not do due to the egg-guzzling actions of an ogre." As Jasper continued, he began to pace like a detective preparing to reveal the murderer in a whodunit. "An ogre who invaded my castle because the guard on gate duty failed to lower the portcullis. This was on the orders of brave Sir Scrapsalot, who did his duty by taking his men to attack the dragon that was rampaging across the beach. And why was the dragon causing such mayhem? Whose head should be rolling from a plank into the sea? Who exactly is to blame for all of this?" "That's simple," announced the sea captain mildly. "You are." "Me?" laughed King Jasper. "Don't be ridiculous. You admitted yourself that this is your cargo." "It certainly is," the captain growled. "And now I know who's responsible for my beautiful ship being wrecked on those rocks beneath your castle." Suddenly she stalked towards Jasper and began to prod him on his royal chest. "You are going to pay for my lost cargo, and you are going to buy me a new ship more beautiful than the last, because you are the dimwit who failed in his duty to switch the light on last night." As the shocking accusation hung in the air, everyone held their breath, even the dragon. In a flash, the truth struck King Jasper like a bolt of lightning from last night's storm. He had been so engrossed by his whodunit that he had totally forgotten to light the beacon, causing the captain's ship to crash against the rocks. Sir Scrapsalot patted him gently on the shoulder. "So, will you be chopping your own head off, your majesty?" Red-faced and ashamed, King Jasper shook himself free and began to stomp back across the sand. "I'm getting back to my book," he mumbled. "Tidy up this mess and buy the good captain a new boat." He paused as he passed his grinning chef. I'll just have some toast this morning, when you're ready." And as his subjects' laughter rang in his ears, King Jasper realized more than anyone that we all have to do our duty, even kings. Hope you enjoyed that story. There'll be more to come on clevertouch.com. Good night.